Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody, and happy Friday. Just start off with a little housekeeping. This is one of the rows we keep in here all the time. A link to our Google Drive folder. The photo circle, even though we're not doing that today, that's just our information for photo circle. And then somebody put in the Innovators Mindset opportunity link for April 27th. So that's just some information there from someone that had put that in there from last time. So as far as colleague circles, hopefully you've taken a minute to write down an issue or a problem that you're dealing with in your district or with your job. And then I'm going to try to be Mindy and facilitate this. Good thing I put down all the steps. Take a couple more minutes. Does anybody need a little bit more time? I have problems landing on one. I can't. I'm sorry. It's okay. No, that's all right. Mine said. Nope, you're fine. Take your time. And if you don't have one, that's okay too. Because we have to pick one, so it just makes it easier.
That's right.
Okay, so those of you that don't have one, you're not turning in one, right? Okay. So our 4 issues that have been turned in are how to help students with social emotional growth without giving up too much core curriculum time. In our district, we have 90-minute block reserved for ELA and 60-minute block for math and K-5. In turn, we struggle to find time for science and social studies instruction. Recruitment and retention. Integrating blending a 7th and 8th grade middle school and 9 through 12 master schedule with shared staff in both core and elective areas. All a little different. So kind of think about, do you want me to read them again? Yeah. How to help students with social emotional growth without giving up too much core curriculum time. In our district, we have 90-minute block reserved for ELA and 60-minute block for math and K-5. In turn, we struggle to find time for science and social studies instruction. Time, help, recruitment and retention, and integrating blending a 7th and 8th grade middle school and a 9 through 12 master schedule because they have shared staff in both core and elective areas.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'll have to take notes on that one.
Yeah.
I'm curious about that last one.
Okay, so how many of you would like to deal with the social emotional growth and core curriculum time? Not giving that core curriculum. Okay. The 90-minute, the ELA and math time, and not enough time for science.
Yeah.
All right. Recruitment and retention. And then integrating blending a 7th and 8th grade middle school 9 through 12 master schedule shared staff in both core and elective areas. Okay. Oh, great. This is my fault. Facilitate and answer questions. Okay. All right. So this will be interesting.
Do you want a note taker? I have it. If this is the KLC.
You guys might have to. Yeah, it is. And I wrote it down. So help me along the way though, because I might have forgotten something when I typed in step by step because we've been doing it again, and I'm like, okay, I know. All right. So 5 minutes. Oh, the group picks one card. We did that. 5 minutes. Person who wrote the selected problem will take 5 minutes to share background about the issue to the group. Okay. Oh, 5 minutes.
Let me talk to you, timer. That's easy.
I'll take timer.
Okay.
Okay. So you know, probably we're gonna probably talk about that. All right. So in our district for ELA and math, we have non-negotiables. And as part of that non-negotiable, for ELA, there's a time piece in there, which is 90 minutes uninterrupted time for ELA. And along with that are specific things that they can and can't teach during that time, kind of just really keeps them focused. And when new teachers come in, they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing during the block, what should not be included in the block, etc. We also have non-negotiables for math, which in the time frame there is 60 minutes. And again, these are the things that are part of the non-negotiables and things that need to be taught, etc. The 90-minute block does not have to be uninterrupted. It can be separated out. So the issue is we have obviously a social study. We have social studies standards and we have science standards. In social studies, we use a supplement called Social Studies Weekly, and for a few grades where there's some gap and the standards aren't addressed, we use some supplementals. So for social studies, that's what we use. For science, which is, in my opinion, the bigger issue, is we use Project Lead the Way, and we use Mystery Science, and then possibly a few supplemental lessons if Project Lead the Way and Mystery Science don't cover a couple standards at a couple different grades. There's just very few. So we didn't even adopt all of the Project Lead the Way modules. In most cases, we have 1 or 2 per grade. Because when we did the alignment piece, there was a great deal of overlap with modules 1 and 2 because it's the engineering piece. So we typically grade levels picked 1 or 2. And then some picked an additional module as well, and it varied per grade level. Well, what we're finding, especially at K2, is they are struggling to find the time, because there's other things besides math and reading or ELA that are going on too, but they are truly struggling to find the time to fit science and social studies in. So this past year, there's been conversation about, well, we need to let the non-negotiables go, and we need to allow for more flexibility in the ELA and the math block. Which I see that side of it, you know, with everything that's coming down from the state and looking at education in a different way and how instruction is delivered. I see where they're coming from here, but at the same time as the people that we are, is losing that fidelity piece with ELA and math, where I'm afraid if we just say, oh, there's no non-negotiables, you know what's going to break loose and people are going to be doing whatever they want to. You know, sometimes they need that structure. So I'm somewhat really at a loss as to how moving forward and making sure that we're providing quality instruction in ELA and math. 1 minute. And that, I'm not having any trouble at all. Now I know I'm a talker, so. But also providing opportunity for them to teach science and social studies with fidelity as well, and using that curriculum that we purchased and spent money on. And I know, I used to be a science teacher. Kids love science and they love social studies. So what do I do? I need some help coming up with some ideas of what to do and how to take back some suggestions or ideas to staff on how we can resolve this ongoing issue, which has been an issue in every district that I've been in, but still continues to be an issue. Okay, can I stop?
Yeah,
I
just
read
5
off
seconds.
the last Okay. Oh, that was fun. Okay. All right. 5 minutes. Group will ask questions. One person will record all of the questions. Is this where I have to turn around?
No, that's.
Is that later? Okay. All right, ask some questions.
But you can't talk.
Right,
You just
listen.
Oh, right now there's questions and you're recording. Or who's,
we ask you.
is somebody recording? And then we go back and I answer all the questions.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a
Learning
recorder?
this process as well. So
I can.
It's a good
I
lesson.
remember it well.
I bet you did. You were in it.
Yeah.
So do we have a person that's writing down all the questions?
No.
I can pass my clock over here and I'll record it.
Oh, no, I'm gonna write them down anyway, so. if you want
Okay,
to-
because then you'll probably be the person that asks me, and then we'll record answers as well. Okay, I'm just gonna sit here and be quiet.
Oh, wait, pause for a second. Sorry, should I put these questions?
I would just bullet them and like.
Well, I mean, in the curriculum leaders meeting thing, or can I just do them all
No,
on my
just do them like on a
side?
separate.
Okay, got it.
Document. Sorry, got it. And then what we can do is maybe embed it here as an example that we've done.
Did you specify what grade levels?
Is your district large enough that you have this issue across multiple buildings to deal with complexity of more than one staff, leadership? Priorities. So,
You have teachers that aren't having problems finding the time that can share with others.
I'm wondering about integration of science, social studies into ELA and math. And my new question was supposed to embed what we just did. Sorry about that. According to the PLC. It's hard not to.
What programs do you use?
Is there an MTSS system in ELA and math that's causing extra time?
What are the other things?
Are your music and PE times together to where you have extra time curriculum? Like extracurricular activities are walked together, and that way it doesn't split it up so much.
How much time is being wasted on transitions?
Yes.
Is this truly a feeling of all your staff, or do you have some squeaky wheels? Or just wow?
how important is social studies and science curriculum at certain levels? Is it, how much of a priority?
Do you feel your teachers that are do all your teachers feel comfortable teaching science and social studies?
What is the time frame for your school day? What are you starting?
Are parents concerned about a lack of science and social studies curriculum in certain grades?
How does your staff feel about the curriculum chosen for science and social studies?
A minute. 5 minutes is long.
It is a long
I
time.
was like, can we just do 3? I think that's all fun.
Breathe. Fix all my typos is what I'm doing.
Yeah, give you time to catch up.
Yeah.
What are your high school and middle school teachers saying about the students that aren't coming into them with what skills they're having? Have they been consulted about what they think is important in those schools?
Right. So on. Okay. Don't be making faces. All right. So now.
No, no,
You
no,
don't have
no.
to answer all our questions.
Yeah, you still got to face us for one more
Oh, then
time.
you start talking about me after.
And then we give solutions.
That's right.
About.
And that's when I turn
Yeah.
around. Okay. All right.
So did you specify which grade level?
And this would be K through 5.
This is a 10-minute one, actually.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Give her a chance. Yeah. Give her a chance to answer.
Is your district large enough so that you are dealing with this problem across several buildings?
We have 4 pre-K through 5 buildings, 2 teachers per grade.
K through what, I'm sorry?
Pre-K through 5 is what's in our building. All 4 buildings, the one thing that is nice in our district is there is consistency from one building. So the expectations for one building are the expectations for the other 3, which is a good thing. So it's really across the board. They all have the same non-negotiables and expectations, same curriculum is used across the district, et cetera.
Do you have teachers who are not having problems finding time?
That's a good question. I would think that I would have to ask maybe through a survey, but I would guess because of the 90 minutes and the 30 minutes and the MTSS and the schedule with our electives are, not to say the schedules are identical or the master schedules are the same in every building, but the time pieces are. And the amount of time that's dedicated to each of those things are, I don't want to call it cookie cutter, but we're pretty structured in the amount of time because we have shared staff. We use MTSS and use the 930, it's all the same. The title buildings might be just a bit different because of the having Title I teachers instead of using paras and classroom teachers for MTSS. But I don't think that that's probably.
So you're saying that you think that you do not have teachers.
Okay, back to that. There may be, well, here's what I would say. If they are finding an ample amount of time for science and social studies, they're probably not following the 90-minute and the 60-minute rule. I mean, they're probably pledging on that and not doing that with fidelity. They're not following the non-negotiables. Whether it be that they choose not to, or they're a new teacher and that kind of went over their head when they were hired and they don't remember. I doubt that's the case, but it could be.
Okay, how to integrate science and social studies, or I think it was like, have you considered integrating the science and social studies into the ELA and math? Whoever's question that was, if I just butchered it, please fix it.
That has been discussed. We use journeys for ELA. At K through 2, we also use Pathways to Reading, which is part of their reading block. For math, we use Envision, and there, like in journeys, there are pieces and there are stories that have science and social studies embedded within them, so that natural integration is taking place. But because we have Project Leads the Way and Mystery Science and Social Studies Weekly, of course, like in Social Studies Weekly, they're reading, so there's always that integrated piece. But as far as you still have the ELA 90-minute block, you have 60 minutes of math where we're using journeys and Envision, and then we also use Number Talks and CGI, some of those things as well. But I would still say it's kind of isolated. It's integrated, but it's isolated at the same time, because Project Lead the Way, Mystery Science, and Social Studies Weekly all have reading and math embedded into the curriculum, but it's still, like, they're not melded. And I don't think our non-negotiables, they don't allow for you to really do that. So maybe our non-negotiables need to be revisited.
Sorry, I couldn't finish my thought.
Take your time.
Right, that's true. Well, I guess I'm going back to, you said that there was some integration, but it's primarily, and I can't think of the word that you said. Primarily.
It's isolated really with Project Lead the Way has math components in it, and it has kids are reading. Same thing with Social Studies Weekly. You know, they're reading all the time, informational text and answering questions, but it's not taught during the 90-minute walk, because they're supposed to be using journeys, and there's only specific things they can do during that 90-minute walk. And using Social Studies Weekly or Mystery Science or Project Lead the Way is not something that we've allowed them to count or bring into that walk, because they can't even get through everything that they have with using the ELA and the math. Yeah. Maybe we should have to change curriculum.
Okay, you already answered the next question, which programs are you using in ELA and math? So we'll move on to what's being done in addition to, and you've answered this too, but I didn't see any notes on it. What's being done in addition to core that takes away from your science or your science and social studies time?
In our day, we also have I'll call them specials or electives. We have PE, music, art, computer, library. Now, art and computer are 2 9 weeks and 2 9 weeks, if that makes sense. So 2 9 weeks are getting art, 2 9 weeks are getting computer, and those teachers just flip buildings. PE and music are all year long, and then library, it's a good question. I think they go to library once a week, and they have checkout and educational instruction time. That is part of the teacher's contractual, like when they have their planning and all of that. So as far as transition, I don't know if that's the same question. That is a good, I'm not sure how much time they have from coming in from PE and going back and forth from lunch, and I'm not sure what they're allowed there. I'm sure that could probably be tightened up. So.
That was the next question. How much time is being wasted on transition?
Yeah, and that could even be transition within the classroom. As well. Some teachers are just awful at that, and they're like, just waste 20 minutes, just like letting kids wander around. And some teachers like it takes 20 seconds. So that might be something to look at too, is cutting back that transition time in the classroom, and then between specials and lunch and recess and all of that. 20 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but it is.
Shoot, 5 minutes is right now.
Is
That's when you can get your social emotional lesson in there.
Yeah.
5 minutes standing in line.
is this truly a feeling of all your staff, or are there spooky bills?
I think it's pretty much, I would say all. Administrators have brought the issue to me, and staff are pretty open with me and comfortable expressing their concerns, because they know I'm not going to take it personally or be angry at them. But I think it's more of a full issue. There's just not enough time in the day to get it in, and it's not that they don't, well, that's the next question. It's not that they don't want to teach it, it's just finding the time to. Project Lead the Way is a fairly comprehensive curriculum, and it takes time to get through those. So I just don't feel like they have the quality amount of time or appropriate amount of time to teach science.
How important is science and social studies curriculum at certain levels? And then what is the priority, I guess, is part of it?
I think I'm one of those. I think every subject area is important, whether it's computer or, because you have kids that have strengths and deficiencies, and they need to be learning everything. I would say historically at K1, 2, we say it's more important to get in the reading and the math, because it's foundational, and you need that before you can, you can't read, you can't really do anything, so. I think it's equally important, but at the same time, if I had to pick, I would pick ELA and math over science and social studies, but I don't wanna have to do that. I wanna make sure that we have time for them all. Okay, geez.
Do all teachers feel comfortable teaching science and social studies?
Yes, we have, Project Lead the Way requires 16 hours of training, so they've all been through that. Because I know some people are not comfortable with science, very well, that's the same thing with writing. Social studies, they've been trained as well. So I think they all feel comfortable. We've provided support throughout the year to make sure that teachers that typically don't like science or aren't comfortable with it, we have a site coordinator in each building for Project Lead the Way to make sure that they're providing ample support for those people that maybe are struggling a little bit, but they're there for everyone. I would say yes, that they've been more than adequately trained.
What's your time frame on your school day?
I believe it's 8 to 3:15.
Are parents concerned with the lack of teaching social studies and science? Can I ask one more question even though the time's up?
Go ahead.
That's all I have. Oh, never mind. I have 2 questions. How does the staff feel about the curriculum chosen for social studies and science?
Through our review process, the staff is involved in, they have a grade level rep, and then those grade level reps take back the curriculum that we're evaluating and share that out with the teachers, and they provide feedback to the evaluation team. So everybody has a piece or a part of making that decision. So I don't make the decision, they do. So I would say they're very comfortable with it, because they pretty much do it. I mean, and they make the right decision, but I don't tell them what they're getting.
I think we have some last questions. What's being said at the middle and high school level of the students being done?
We're just into the infancy stages of the adoption of science. This is our first year, and social studies just the second. So I would say before, because we did not have any comprehensive curriculum for science, kids were probably coming to the high school not adequately prepared, simply because the teachers they were just hodgepodging science together, doing whatever they could. So my guess would be that the kids probably were not coming with a cohesive set of skill set. Some kids from one building might be coming to them with more than another building, just depending on who the teachers were and what they were using. There was nothing consistent there. So I would say, I don't know, I'd have to wait another year to probably see what the kids know when they're coming, and are they, for physical science or those lower level classes, are they prepared? Are they where they need to be when they come? I don't have that data though probably right now. I would say no, they're not coming prepared, because in the past we haven't had anything for them. Okay. All right, so now I turn my back. And I'm supposed to be taking notes, right? While you guys talk. All right, let me find I guess I can.
You need a bigger piece of paper, Holly, or something to write on?
Yeah, this is fine. Be careful, I just kind of turn to my side. All right. Okay. All right. So, because I don't want you. Go ahead.
So do I just have to read the question and her?
So now,
No.
or do we just?
We just talked.
supposed to say our perceptions of
Yeah.
our issue.
My interpretation.
My
That's a good. My
interpretation.
interpretation.
My
is-
interpretation is, which is how you're supposed
Yeah,
to
that's
start.
Mhm. Let me do this.
Everybody's had the KLC training.
Yeah. Where does it say that I turn around?
Person takes pad and piece of paper and takes notes. The group provides suggestions and ideas, but it's actually their interpretations is what it should
So
say.
turn around
And listen as we talk about,
and group makes interpretation.
yeah, because it's not necessarily always suggestions, some of it's interpretation.
What you
So what an outsider might be seeing
Yeah,
that
and
you
it may be,
can't see.
and those of you that haven't participated before, your interpretation may be totally off, and that's okay. And some may be spot on, which will really make me think and go back, oh, that might really be the root cause of the problem and help me resolve it. And it's okay if you're way off.
And another for improvement for interpretations is you might, even if you can say an interpretation, it might not be yours, but you're trying to be the devil's advocate and throw everything up on the table that maybe somebody hasn't
considered, even if it's not your true interpretation, it's an interpretation.
And it
That
could
makes
be,
sense? So
and it
that
could
it's
be,
not personal, like you could be
Yep.
thinking,
it could be something that I haven't thought of, or
Yeah.
maybe I'm not doing my job in a certain, and that's okay,
Mhm.
because then it makes me think about
Maybe
maybe things
you
I
feel
need
that
to.
way. It's just-
Yep. Okay, how long is
Is that
this one,
right?
5?
This is 10.
we have many, many interpretations.
Okay, go for it.
My interpretation is that the teachers may be feeling pretty overwhelmed with all that they have access to. I'm a teacher and I had access to all that, and I had to implement them all. Ooh, I don't know, I like my freedom.
Okay, there's an interpretation. The teachers like their freedom, and they don't like being told that now they have to teach science and social studies to make kids ready for middle school, high school, and they want that freedom.
Well, I'm thinking maybe
Do that, but
teachers teach to their skills and maybe split classrooms might be some suggestions. Also, I'm wondering about alternating social studies and science every other day to get it in. I know with our district, I don't seem to have too much trouble getting it in, but the morning block is math and science. The afternoon block is your language arts or your social studies and science. And we have our music and PE from 12:50 to 1:50, so that allows, 40 minutes before that time and a good 2 hours after, like from 2 o'clock to 3:20. So to teach the sciences, that's when I teach my science, or to get out all the supplies and everything. Last 20 minutes, maybe even to go back and hit ELA if you need to, or computer time, because I noticed she said she had computer time built in, which we do not at our school. So computer time 1 day a week. I don't know, library 1 day a week. Art, same way we don't have art built in, and art is built in on a Friday. Some days are not that.
So I'd say it does sound as if some priorities have been selected, we've all some specials or electives, and so they have prioritized things like computers, art, PE, library over science and social studies. Maybe not consciously, maybe it's just worked out that way. But it and the amount of time that they're spending on ELA and math, that balances. The other thing I was to kind of play on that is you could look at some kind of more flexible scheduling. Instead of getting away from this idea that I teach science every day for 45 minutes, consistent block. I'm not familiar with the project lead way in terms of how it's structured, but it could devise it as more of a longer experience where maybe instead of thinking of it as one shot every day, maybe it's a couple of days in a row with long blocks that you can pull out, or and you're just swapping out some of these things that they've chosen to have priorities. So maybe computers isn't every day. It's a block of time.
I wrote down, are you a big enough district, or would you have the staffing and scheduling flexibility that you can make science and social studies like a special, where you have one teacher dedicated to 3-5, I don't know, science, that they come in, we're giving you this dedicated like 2 hours every Friday, you come in and do it, we shut down everything else. So it's kind of like a special system, same thing with social studies. I know that that's how some schools in Salina do it. I went to a KSE science thing and sat at a table with teachers that were, that's just what we do. We're like, art on a cart, now we're science on a cart, and we kind of really get an intensive experience, really memorable for the kids. You take away some of that other like non-playable time, give them the most bang for your buck, rather than like, this is just something we shove in every time we have 20 activities. But that's a whole restructuring of how you do things. So that's a huge change. Other things that I wrote down, just because I know that you guys have a super robust PLC system, I put down, our transition inefficiency, something that ELC groups could discuss for their own grade levels and solve that problem for themselves. Find those other extra ways, and then would it be something you could think about doing would be doing it like this same kind of thing, a colleague circle with those groups of teachers with the same topic and see how they would solve their own problem. I don't know, it's just always interesting to hear. We sit and think we've got to come up with all the answers, where if we simply pose a question, a lot of times people will try or find a way to solve some of their own problems, and then we have less work to do, and it works better for them anyway. And then again with the PLC time, could you give teachers time to like look at all 4 of those programs, especially look at journeys and pick out the science and social studies topics that are covered in that, and then reorganize the order of their science and social studies instruction throughout the year to hit at the same time? Since I'm sure journeys has a scope and sequence that you have to follow, but science and social studies, you can choose. We're going to do life science in September instead of March because journeys has this big unit. I am not familiar with journeys or any of your other curriculum programs, so that I may be way off there.
Angela, to tag off that, mine was, I wondered the same thing about really, and I'm not familiar with Project Lead the Way up K-5. I know what it looks like in the uppers, but really tagging, helping those teachers see the connection between the math standards and what's being done in Project Lead the Way, and okay, this is the perfect module for here. And because I do sometimes think map it differently, and an interpretation sometimes teachers have is, oh, math and reading are the most important. Well, see how we can really make those connections for kids in math by doing this Project Lead the Way. Or look, I get to embed even deeper this ELA standard, here. So
I think the biggest thing with that is teachers would have to have time, because in theory everyone wants to do that, but in practice it's very time consuming, labor intensive for the teacher or whoever has to find those overlaps. So I think like scheduling time, we're going to get together on this PD day and this is what we're going to do, rather than saying, hey, we could actually figure that out. Just it gets lost in the whole thing.
I have a thought on, or interpretation on, I'm the 5th grade teacher, and we also use Studies Weekly. And so I guess my suggestion would be, could you open up that ELA block to let them use that Studies Weekly to give it a try? Because I personally love it as a tool to use, especially when we're on those expository topics that we're really working on, and it just lends itself really nicely to it. And it's 2 birds, 1 stone. So that.
We haven't talked much or interpreted much about the actual front end of this, which was that they have a non-negotiable concept. And so I would be curious to know how consistent that kind of a model is in schools. Are people that rigid and that structured? And we've seen some variations of that across other schools that maybe look a little bit more like you. Might work fine in a small school district where there's only a couple of teachers dealing with this, but we scale it up and you're running into some problems.
1 minute. My interpretation is that the district isn't alone, that there's a lot of districts experiencing this because of, I hate to blame everything on No Child Left Behind, but No Child Left Behind and assessments have caused the non-negotiables. And math and science, or not math, but science teachers and social studies teachers are now saying, hey, we're being assessed up here, but we're getting students with 0. We're having to take them from 0 to grade 8 all in a couple of years because they haven't had any priors before, but yet they're still responsible for all that vocabulary. So I think our system created it, and so it's not going to be solved overnight because it wasn't created overnight. So I think our teachers and admin need to understand that this isn't something that they're fault for it, but now we need to figure out how to go back and fix it.
I'm just gonna kind of go through my notes and kind of reflect and share. I do think teachers are overwhelmed, no doubt, with everything. Each year we typically adopt, I would say in the last 4 years, we have adopted, we started ELA, math, and we did social studies, and then we did science, so that's all new. At the same time, I do try to make sure that they are provided with professional learning and support to implement, and try to reassure them that, in the first couple of years, just do the best you can add to it, become more comfortable with it. But it is a lot, and that's not all they're doing. You think about all the other things that they're expected to do as well, and I'm just glad I'm not a teacher anymore, because I would probably be overly stressed, but they're not getting compensated as well. So teachers like their freedom. I think that's true. Although I think if teachers are given appropriate or curriculum or support materials, whatever you would like to call it, as long as they were part of the group they got to pick, and or they've been given some choice in that, they're more likely to use the materials than if they don't. And obviously, if we provide professional learning and support in those areas, better chance they're going to use it as well. Teachers definitely like to teach to their skill set. I think in elementary, as we get up to the upper grades, some of them do actually, one does social studies, one does science, sometimes one will do ELA and one will do math. And it's a little bit different in each building, but that freedom is allowed in the buildings. If they want to assign certain teachers to teach certain things, they can. At the lower end, that typically is not the case, but sometimes in 4th and 5th grade, they assign social studies or science and such. Alternating science and social studies periods, I think that's pretty much what they do now in the afternoons, depending on, I'm not sure how often each week, but they'll do one or the other, or if it's 4th and 5th grade, if they've done it, one teacher will take this one group of kids and the other, and then they flip-flop. Reducing specials times, that's something to look at as long as it doesn't interfere with the negotiated contractual time for planning. That is something definitely to look at. I love the flexible scheduling, and I had kind of thought about that as well, as maybe even if it was once or twice a month, dedicating a half a day to science or social studies, where we just don't do anything else, because those project lead the way modules, they're tough. It's better to spend a half a day in that module and really get into it and do it, and then maybe they could get through it. And then you're not, say if we did keep the non-negotiables, you're really not interfering with that, because you just decided 2 days a month we're going to do this, and especially maybe for science, more so than social studies. That might be a good resolve for that. I've also thought about hiring a science teacher that would serve as a specials teacher, that would be in all 4 buildings, when they do like science teacher, not science teacher on a cart, but they would have a room, and just like we have for art and such. That's more of a money thing, but it's a great idea. And I think if one person was teaching K through 5 science, and it was a person that loves science, and you know how that is, you have that right person that's in that position, it's an awesome thing. So it really, as we start to change and are thinking about it, that still might be a possibility of, in the future, something we want to look at. I definitely will take back the idea about PLCs and having them talk about transition time, and sharing what they do in each building and how much time they allow, and then maybe some professional learning on quick transitions and how to make sure that you're doing that in your classroom, and some strategies and such to tighten that up a bit. That's an awesome idea. Thank you. Colleague circles, that's awesome too. Having them sit down and go through this activity and coming up with some of these ideas and such, kind of those ahas that we have as well. PLC is kind of looking at cross-curricular alignment and where to, pull in journeys and math and such to all of the 4 areas is a great idea. Again, that takes some time and it has to be very structured and organized, but it can be done. Teachers seeing the connections, that kind of goes along with that, and that definitely does allow for that. Social Studies Weekly, I like the idea of possibly going back, and the non-negotiables just were in place when I came to the district, and then we've just revised them, but I think you're right.
I forgot to remind you.
That's okay. That it goes back to No Child Left Behind and really focusing so much on math and ELA, and I still believe they're so important, but when we go back again and revisit it, maybe allowing a little bit more flexibility. I still think there needs to be that structure and the expectation, but maybe freeing that up a little bit for them would be a good compromise. Thank you, everybody.
Are we done with this circle? Because I wanted to make one comment.
Yes, go ahead.
Instead of hiring a science teacher, maybe a STEAM teacher.
Or, like an art.
And Project Lead the Way actually encourages that.
That's a
I
great
mean,
idea.
that's something that they wish that you would do because they say it's the right person in that position is what makes
do that.
So you
kids.
could maybe give them a bigger block of time if they're considered STEAM instead of art and science.
Thank you. Yeah, great ideas.
My last comment on this activity is we did this like in early January and then we had an in-service day and I got to run like a rotation. I had like a 1-hour session with everybody. They were K-12 groupings and I made them do this and just go, what do you see as a problem? And they
Love it.
I mean, it just made them feel, and every of all 4 groups, every sentence topic was almost exactly the same. That's my group. I'm like, there we definitely identified a district-wide problem that we need to address.
Yeah.
But they really, and I muddled my way through it and, adjusted times on the fly based on, just being flexible with the day. And I know it wasn't perfect, and I didn't follow all the rules, but my staff really enjoyed it. And they generated some ideas and some consistent ideas from her too. And it's been fun to hear feedback on how they apply it. So,
Has anybody else had a chance to take it back and use it in their district with any group of admins or teachers?
Holly, I used it in the principal's PLC here at SDAC just to model so that then they would have that in their toolkit to go back and use if they wanted to use with staff. And it was very well received as well. Enjoyed the structure, enjoyed the process, as well as one of them walked away, which actually, like you said, they really all walked away with great, because all of the things the principals put down on the card, every principal can relate to. I mean, every principal.
Just like today, I mean, many
Right.
struggle with this same issue, maybe in different ways.
Right.
But I think even if it's my issue, we can all go back and when we're talking about that in our districts, you're like, oh, I didn't think about that, or that's a great idea, or that is possibly maybe the root of the problem. The one thing I like, and I'm a very structured person, I appreciate the outline and like the step-by-step on how you're supposed to go through this activity, and it keeps it kind of, I don't know what the word is, use it with fidelity, I suppose, and it works well. Again, possibly changing the time pieces. If you don't need the whole 10 minutes, then, and there's been silence for a minute, maybe you move on, and that's okay, but
I love one of the pieces that when you're sitting there listening, you're not allowed to talk from the standpoint. I think that does something to our brains to go, oh, I'm just, versus I got to rebut or I got to add on. I think it really allows us to listen. And I think there's some power in that too, that we aren't really having a dialogue back and forth. I throw the ball, you throw the ball back, I throw the ball.
Trying to clean up. Anybody else? I'm trying to clean up this one step here. Person turns around, turns away from the group, using a padded piece of paper, takes notes regarding interpretations made by group. Terrible typer. Okay. All right. Anything else? The next is really, we didn't do this last time, so just general Q&A, and we'll just go around the table. I know many times some of you have a hot topic on the table. You just have a question that you want to ask the group. Maybe you want to vent or share some success that's occurring in your district. So we'll just do that now, and we'll just start. Kevin. No, I'm just giving her time.
We are struggling a little bit talking about Gemini 2, whether or not we want to jump on board right now or wait or do it at all, to be quite honest. I'm just kind of curious, is the right time to have the conversation?
Yes. No, it's fine. No, it's good.
We are looking at our PISA goals and the projects and initiatives that are designed with that. To some degree, I think they fit a little bit of Gemini redesign theory. I'm not sure they're as aggressive or as system redesigning as maybe what we're certainly being asked to approach. I've got some staff, some leaders that are like, let's go for it, and I've got some that are very apprehensive. I'm sure they want to add this to the plate. I'm still unsure exactly how you blend the PISA and the Gemini 2 concepts together. So the PMB is probably a logical way to do this. So that's I'm just kind of curious if your teams have had this conversation. Are you headed towards it? Are you trying to apply? What have you thought about it? What are your apprehensions?
Our principal wants us to do it. We've had these conversations, but you can become a part of Gemini and do it through that, or you can, if you want to make those changes, do it on your own. You don't need the Gemini. That's what our superintendent said. Why do we need, if we already have a license to redesign and change things as we want. So why, and I don't know, and quite truthfully, some of the things, and I know they haven't reported full out, I just noticed that we got an email that they're gonna do the import, I think I think we're gonna, I thought we were supposed to hopefully get updates someday from, but what I'm hearing isn't all that earth shattering so far. So I don't know, maybe I'm being very pessimistic, which is not like me. But listening to my superintendent go, why do we, if we want to make those changes, we can already do that. So that's where we're at. Yeah, I mean, so that sounds kind of.
But are there advantages to joining that formally? Are there supports and resources you're getting that you can't otherwise, or what would have to be seek out?
Let me preface this, but we're not going to jump on board. I know we don't have, no one at my level or above me is expressing interest. But I got an email from a retired teacher who's doing a long-term sub at Remington, and she said they're considering it, and they are, because their concern is if you wait until everything's in place, then it will be really rigid what you get to do. Somebody else is going to make all those decisions for you. So, and I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know, I mean, that would go directly in opposition to the whole idea. So, I know she was asking because she's retired, so she's like, well, what is going, if you walked into this. So.
I do know, I listened to the webinar, I don't know, it was a couple weeks ago, I think, and they did say that they're revamping the, I'll call it the process or the document, but I would assume that that can be accessed by any district. So if you're wanting to go through the process on your own, you could. We, as an administrative team, Dr. Black, my superintendent, brought it to the administrative team last week, and we talked about it just a little bit, just to see where they were at and what their interest was. And he also presented it to the Board of Education last week. And what we've kind of decided to do is to really develop a committee within the community of all stakeholders and start talking about it. We're not going to jump in. Doesn't mean we're not going to start thinking and getting a feel for what we want to do for redesign, but we're not jumping in on this unless somebody they change their mind. But we are starting to think about it and actually put a formal process in place with starting with a committee and talking about what is it that we want Augusta schools to be like, and not just it being the administrative team and a few teachers deciding, but really bringing in some community and people like that to start having conversations about it.
Do you guys see it as being a separate process
I think that, you know, we're just a year one, even though we've done the needs assessment, I don't know how many times, and say we picked relationships and rigor. I kid you not, it's great. I have the rubrics memorized inside out, backwards, upside down, as do many, which we understand it, which is good. But we're just now, we just picked those two goals, so we haven't even gotten to the point where in the fall, the buildings will create their building goals and action plans, and then the district will come back and create their action plans based off of their needs for relationships and rigor. And then at that point, that's when I really feel like, you know, you have those two focus areas, you're working on the others as well, but that's when you can start seeing that redesign piece, and we've already kind of talked about it, and what we feel is important in redesign. A lot of it has to do with the social emotional growth and things that we're doing, and that's the relationships piece and what we're doing in our district, to make sure that we have a grounded piece there, because if that's not there, the academic is not, that's our belief, that the academic is not going to make a difference. I mean, you've got to take care of your kids first, get them in a place where they can succeed academically. So that's, we've already started, you know, we're thinking about it. Do we know what we're going to do? No, but that's kind of where we're at.
Superintendent forward to some degree, strictly from a PR issue. If
And
you're
mine
going to
doesn't
be
care.
considered a
Mine
progressive
doesn't
forward thinking
Mine's like PR.
district in the state of Kansas, and you're not a part
Yeah.
of this redesign model, what does that say?
That you're not doing
You
anything.
know, yeah, and it may be that outside of the education,
Yeah. And my superintendent, which we know everybody, he is not he wants to do what's in the best interest. He's not a PR person. He's kind of
That's
actually
been mine.
introverted, and he
Just
doesn't
our
really
community.
care if the rest of the world, like we're on a pedestal or people talk about us. Although he wants good things to be happening, and they are, but he's not one to go out and put it on a commercial.
Yeah,
I would
the
say-
irony for us was, we had Dr. Watson at our service about a week ago, and so he did his you know, he's on that pitch right now, and like, everywhere he goes, it's fun. So we had staff afterwards that thought we did that on purpose. And that was not, because we had to look back a year ago. This deal, you know, there was no such thing as gender. Unfortunately. So we're kind of dealing with that term.
Back to Missy's comment, I would agree with Penny. And every month, the service centers have a meeting with Dr. Watson at 7 a.m. on Friday morning. It happened to be today. He has zero plans. I think there will be somebody else forcing him with I mean, like, I don't see him saying, okay, here, we're all gonna go to flex mod scheduling, and you know, he does not want that. And now we are working, like you said, to build a framework, a robust process, because what we also know is some schools are like, hey, give us a little bit more, you know, help us with a little bit of structure to get us moving down that road, because doing it on our own, sometimes when there's not that outside person being able to ask those questions or whatever, it does make it more difficult. So are they working on creating that? And with the Gemini 2 process, that will be a change from Gemini 1, is they will be teamed into collaborative groups. Not that everybody has to do the same thing, but there's that built-in, not just over Zoom, because I think that's one of the failures, if that's one of the learning opportunities we've had, is those Friday Zooms with the Mercury schools are hard to really collaborate and learn and grow. And so being able to build teams and bring them together and say, hey, you know, here's Nickerson, South Hutch, and Smoky Valley, and they're totally looking at different things, but we're able to communicate and bounce those ideas, or what do you guys see here? So I think that's potentially an advantage to formally joining that group.
I think part of my stress is I fill a lot of roles, which I know most of us do in the district. And so I spent my afternoon yesterday dealing with 7th grade girl drama. So an hour and a half. And the thought of, if I had to get up at 7 o'clock this morning and do a 2-hour, webinar with somebody, I mean, I don't know that I was in the right frame of mind, but I come to this meeting and we talk about curriculum and things that I love. Then I go to the state meeting and they start, and they, you know, on one hand, you have Dr. Watson saying, we're gonna de-emphasize assessments, they're not that important. And then they show you the rubric for how you're gonna get a score based
Your
on your
AMON
scores.
and all that, yeah.
I was.
And we're all, you know, we're going back to district ideas instead of buildings, you know, which I like, because I felt like No Child Left Behind really separated my 3 buildings within our district. And it became a, well, we're doing okay and you're not type of thing. But then we're gonna get a score based on our building, not on our, I mean, it just seems like, I have to admit, my word of the year this year's journey, and I wrote on January 1st, I have to decide if I should be retiring because I don't know if I have the energy to do this. I mean, and I even think when I was younger, could I keep this all straight at one time? It's like there wasn't. When we did QPA, yes,
So
you know,
easy.
those of us who did QPA, they had a framework that we followed. And that's, I'm one of the districts, you know, I've been telling our superintendent and our principal, when you come to the PLC, when you come to your superintendents, find out what SDAC can do for us, because I don't have time to start from scratch, which is what they're saying, while I'm doing my job. And I can't ask my teachers to either.
You were talking about, you know, they have, and they've changed a little bit. I think they're also having the people from KSDE that are in charge of redesign meet in say at a service center, where people in the area that are on it can come to one place. I think it's a more efficient way for them to get more schools involved too, because they were going out to individual districts and doing this, and now they're bringing people together. But I also think that collaborative piece, or even just talking amongst each other and getting ideas, that's always a good thing. I mean, think about what we learned here. But back to what you said, so I'm thinking, I have all these things that I do and just keep taking on more and more. Okay, now I'm in charge of redesign too. Okay, so I've got, now if we don't join, I've got to take everybody through this process. And I mean, it's just, not that I can't do it, I'm not saying that, but it's just one more thing that is probably going to be put on somebody in this room's plate to do. And I would almost, if we were going to do it, unless somebody else is going to take charge of it, would rather be a part of the redesign. So when we go to these meetings, we're collaborating, we're talking, and somebody else is in charge of facilitating that process. And it's not that I don't want to do it, it's just I don't feel like I have the time to dedicate that to myself to do an awesome job and make sure that we're doing the right thing. So, but we'll end up doing it, and I'll have to do it, and it'll be fine. But
One of the
my calendar at the beginning of the year, 54 plus 31 equals 80. And last Friday I got to 54, so I just have to wait till June 1st. And no, we've got a new high school principal coming in, and I have to be real honest. First thing I said when we started talking about who we're going to hire, I said, don't be hiring anybody my age. We've got to have some younger people with new ideas. You know, we've got
energy,
to have people my age.
forward thinking.
Yes. And
Not
who
like
aren't going, "God, we can do this." You know, that are going, this is a great idea, let's redesign. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm all ready to jump on board, but I want to get on somebody's boat. I don't want to be
The boat lead, yeah, not the driver of the boat or the
And-
bus.
And Missy, I think that's probably one of the things they found in Gemini 1 is many of the Gemini 1 schools, and I cannot, the mathematician in me shouldn't use the word many without being able to back that up, but it's what I'm going to do. I think the thought is many of them have really not moved or done too much because there wasn't that outside collaboration, that outside communicator, that outside honestly pusher, not that pushing to do it my way, but pushing to keep us moving. Because I do think one of the things we have to look at, and this came up this morning with Dr. Watson, is what goes off the plate. You know, what are we doing that we collected? I mean, what are we doing that needs to get taken off the plate? I mean, you know, and so that has to be a part of that conversation, or redesign isn't going to happen. I mean,
And with redesign, kind of go back to it, I don't think there'll ever be a one size fits all. Our communities are way different. And I think, I think our Board of Education and I think Dr. Watson, they all recognize there would never be a one size fits all.
no, absolutely.
I thought you said that in our meeting. Yeah, there'll
Because
never
it's-
ever
it's
be,
even
even so
now.
different. Yeah, even now, I mean, and I think I think everybody's gonna, maybe, everybody's doing a redesign, if you think about it, just going through the key stuff on there. And people are taking it, I mean, we've got miniature redesigns going on, like, we're gonna be one of the first schools, our middle school's gonna take on the badges.
Mm.
And we're one of the first ones that are doing that, so we're doing stuff, but we're not doing Gemini. I'm just worried we're gonna go too far down a path that is gonna go back to like the 70s and 80s when they took down walls and it didn't work. You're gonna have this whole group of kids that didn't have a good education. I think we've got more research now. We wouldn't be like that. But I just, that's kind of swimming through my head. I can't help it. Just,
Thank you, good discussion. Angela, do you have anything you wanna share or vent about, or?
I just been working,
Correct.
we're part of the group, it's Southwest Plains and Supplying Push Driving Readers, which I'm calling Link now.
Link.
And that all, like, it's dumped on somebody, but dumped on me. And it's, you don't have a district literacy plan in place, just even trying to create that. And that's like my one, it'll be an appendix, and it's taking me like a week, and it's 12 pages long. It's been a nightmare. So I'm struggling with all of that, and I'm not even the one, I mean, I'm not even writing the grant, I'm writing like something that goes in.
Do you have a group of people though that are helping, that,
I
like
had
an
a group.
ELA committee or something?
That filled out the needs assessment, and then the rest of it just got put on my plate, so.
You should make them help you do that too.
Yeah, it's been a process, but it's almost done. So I didn't know where anybody else was at on that. It was like, I don't know if we missed the boat or I somehow got behind, but I wasn't even aware that this was something I had to be doing until January. So I kind of hit panic mode. And Southwest Plains wants our district literacy plans to them by next Thursday. So just came at like a time, just like you said, never in your office.
Yeah.
So.
Our consortium, like I am part of a consortium with 7 districts that are applying for the grant. And we just finished the needs assessment with my pre-K through 12 ELA committee. And then we're dedicating a day. And then we're having a outside grant person and his students kind of put findings together based on the needs assessment. And then together as an ELA group, we're going to go through and do the literacy plan. We'll do it. Hopefully we can get it done in a day, but I'm not doing it by myself. Again, it's just one of those things where I don't think it's I don't think I should. I think it should be based off of what those pre-K through 12 teachers and administrators feel is appropriate. But I also understand that it's getting done that way too, because you only have so much time.
Yeah.
So I think every consortium, just depending on, say, Cleela is the one here at SDAC, whenever she tells people that they need to turn that in, that's when they have to turn it in, and we have to have ours done.
who's in the consortium through SDEC? Tamara had given us a survey and we never heard anything back, so I didn't know.
The people who expressed interest have been notified.
They would have been on that list. I didn't get, and you were on that list. I've been listening in on the webinars thinking somebody someday from here was gonna say something to us, but we still haven't heard a word. And I thought, well, it's okay, I've got enough going on. But
Well, I took all the yeses who said, yes, we were interested in
yeah, but
participating.
then what about when we went back and told Tamara though that we misunderstood? Because I went back and told her, yes, we'd be part of it, that never heard anything back. So, and it's okay. It's just, I thought, I kept thinking we'd hear from somebody, we never did.
So I'll tell you, because now I'm in charge.
Okay.
In charge is a really loose word because I feel like every day I get new information that I didn't know the day before. So we took the people who were yes, and that was resent out a second time to superintendent. And all the people that said yes, we're interested, then we've been in communication with them
Completing tasks.
about completing tasks and things like that. So.
Okay, that was weird. Next.
We're looking at budget and looking at software and how much we buy and thinking we spend a lot. What can we do to cut some of it? So, but right now, I don't know how many use Accelerated Reader, but they had that huge update over the Christmas, and I say, let's cut it. I mean, they're driving me crazy with the every day. It might, like the software, it might work, this might show up, it might not. I'm just so done with that. And I wondered if anybody else is still using it, and are you considering ditching it because of it? Or what? The only reason that I think we hold on to it is because of the practice. You know, it just makes that accountable practice piece. Is there something better to use for accountable practice? You know, better way to get accountable practice? Something that would be easy. I don't think, and I convinced the fourth grade teacher too. I think at fourth, fifth, and sixth, we have enough other opportunities that we can create accountability, and really make the kids practice. But what I'm hearing from the lower elementary is, you know, when they're reading a half-point book, they're going through several books a day, and they need a way of just knowing that they really read them. So that's really all they're, you know, using that for.
There's a free website called Read Theory. And I've been really impressed with it, and it does the grade equivalency and the lexile and all that stuff. It gives them it gives them a pretest, and then it places them where they need to be. It gives them reading options at their grade level, and then, you know, tries to move them, anyway, it's built in. I like it really well. I'm using it right now to try to get a student registered for, into special ed. I'm using it as one of my reading stuff. So it just, they can take tests over books. They're not taking tests over books, they're giving them a reading passage right there. And then they ask them 4 or 5 questions. And then.
So it's just more like a reading comprehension. It's not actually books that they're.
Right, yes, sorry, yeah, so it would not be, it's an option, I guess, because it's giving them the reading practice and the accountability. That's what I would see.
See, and we use Reading Plus, and that does a great job, but if again, it doesn't work so well for first grader.
Yeah.
You have to be able to read.
What about iStation? That goes
We
down by
did.
3K.
Again,
It's not the same as AR. I mean, but
Yeah.
it is the
And we
reading
have
practice and
Lexia.
diagnostic.
we have Lexi, but we didn't opt into the iStation because nobody wanted to learn one more program that you were going to have for a couple of years and then be gone. So that's why we opted out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it's actually got much better resources because we were using Lexia. But it is one more thing. We have to train everybody.
Yeah.
But
And
we
nobody-
like iStation much better than Lexia. And because there's a huge resource piece in there that
On the
Lexia
iStation,
did
on
not
the
have.
Lexia, or no,
In iStation.
in iStation.
It's huge. Like,
How do your upper elementary teachers like it? I'm curious compared to Lexia.
we use it all the way through middle school.
Oh.
And we use it for tier 2. And we use Reading Plus for tier 3. And that's the middle school. Now, at the elementary, they use it more like during their reading block during a station. You know, it's an activity that they do at the computer station. And they're not required to do it, but if they do it, they have to come to the training that we provide so they know how to use the resources, and we set up their account and make sure that they're comfortable with that. But
The reason I asked that question was because I had heard one person say, well, we didn't like it in the uppers because it was too kiddie. And again, that could be, and that's why I wanted to know, because, that's
different
one
characters.
teacher, one,
the problem is when you have a kid, especially if it's, how do I say it? If they are really like a middle schooler that's a low reader and they're on a first grade level, but then it's diagnostic, and they are probably, the characters probably are babyish. And I can't remember, there was talk about that one. I can't always keep up, but about the characters that are in there, and I don't read. That's always going. I think it's pretty much anything that you use, especially if they're low
because then
readers.
they're really doing first grade,
Now, I don't think that's the
absolutely.
case with Reading Plus because it doesn't have the character.
It's
cheesy
just too
stuff.
hard. If you get below third grade, it's too hard.
So, all right. Next.
We
Lucy?
are talking at the middle school about how to spend our elective time. We talked about the badges, so I would love to find out who Penny is doing that. Who's your person?
And Zacharato at Green Valley Middle School.
Okay, and we'll see that at wrestling.
Yeah.
Because transitioned from, it used to be our afternoons were almost exclusively spent for our lower level kids in remedial math, remedial reading, so that we had kids who went to high school and had never been to band, or, I mean, you know, we were pulling. And when I took over as principal, I said, we're done with that. Because those kids, our dropout problem was becoming serious. But we're still talking about, I want to avoid being a mini high school. My high school principal right now wants me to offer all the intro classes at 8th grade so that they don't have to take anything in high school and they're all funded. And I understand the money issue, but I had a kid who after about 3 weeks in Woods came in, and I know it's not called Woods, but whatever. And she goes, I hate this class and I gotta be in here for the rest of the semester. And I've tried to tell the principal, we're not gaining more kids in that program. We're turning kids, you know, kids who, I think if she waited a year, so yeah. But anyway, we're talking about careers and those kind of things. And one of the things that came up is the issue that our elementary is not teaching science and social studies. So,
There you go.
and what they do is, you know, 5th grade, they do a 3-hour block, one Friday a month for science, and then they're doing star base. And I'm a math teacher, so I do believe math is super important. But I said, sometimes you catch kids on how important math is by connecting to science. You know, and sometimes kids who don't like to read really want to read something about a social studies thing. So anyway, we're talking more about those, but that's why, you know, we start talking about, well, let's do PISA and all that. We don't have time to do that because we're spending lots of times. Our tier 3 has become a pull-out program where I have a teacher who makes good connections with kids. She has turned 3 kids around already this year. You think, well, what's only 3? Well, that's 3 more than got turned around in previous years. And she has taken 3 kids that were flunking almost everything. And they're passing everything now.
It's a relationship piece.
Yeah, in middle school, that's more important. Anyway, that's what we're doing. So I got right now Greenville Valley, so I don't forget.
Mary Ellen?
We had just a couple of things. First, we're trying to figure out what math curriculum we're going to use, and we're not. And then the other thing is scheduling at the middle school. They've kind of decided to let the teachers have some input on it. And unfortunately, I'm the only math teacher in the middle school. And so it kind of causes problems because nobody else wants to teach math because they're not comfortable teaching math. And so I'm also the only 5th grade teacher as well. So it's gonna, I think next year we'll have some changes that I'll be the one teaching. So anyway, we don't have the MTSS time. And so that's part of a complaint that we're having is that, so if I'm teaching 8th grade math and 5th grade, when are the 8th graders supposed to be able to get additional help from me if no other teacher in the building is willing to teach math or is scared to death of math? So we're kind of scheduling. So anyway, that's our big.
Okay.
Our big thing is really just teacher overwhelm. All the things that are coming down the pipe, you know, we talked about not having time to teach science and social studies, and now we're throwing in STEM, engineering, social, emotional. We need to have time for all of those pieces. And then you talk about MTSS and why aren't you getting progress monitoring done? And I don't have time to do it, and I can't sit down with the kid. And they are so overwhelmed that people are talking about throwing their hands up and saying, I'm done. And we're talking young teachers with lots of energy. So when the question came up about, you know, hiring and retention, was retaining those teachers that are awesome, and some of them are the ones that are saying, I can't do this anymore. And so we're really trying to work in that wellness piece and the balancing stuff and the stress. What do you take off your plate? And when you give them permission to take off their plate, when all of it is important. So that's, and I'm sure lots of districts are struggling with that, so that's where we are.
Well, I'm one of those teachers. Find something different.
So, yeah. That's what we're talking about, you know, teachers who are good and awesome and knowledgeable and it's just too much. And so we really need to find an answer because what we're gonna end up with is people who don't know better and come in for a couple of years and go home. And so you have this perpetual turnover and nobody becomes the expert. So that's scary.
Our teacher leaders that are burning out.
It's absolutely right.
We've been looking at updating our curriculum, mainly in sciences and social studies for sure, because that's, I mean, we just recently added new language arts and math in the elementary ends, but I think the high school end is looking at updating their math curriculum. And then elementary end is looking at sciences and social studies. Also, social and emotional program of some kind, you know, we feel like we need that for elementary especially. They have a high school counselor, but not anything for the lower elementary, so we need some kind of social and emotional program of some kind, whether it be, we've talked about having mixed family groups, like with all school, all the grades, and bringing them down and having teachers teach. That's again scheduling. You know, 30-minute time where you do an activity with all different levels, doing something with them. We already have a Wildcat match, which that's going cool. It's a high school program where they, religious based, but out of Kingman, they come and they pick our high school students to come and they match them with a new kid out of a grade level and they come spend 30 minutes with them once a week. It's really like that. Love that.
Look at the Center for the Collaborative Classroom. It's a curriculum company that integrates social and emotional standards into everything that they offer. I don't know if they have science and social studies. I know they have some language arts stuff.
What's it called?
It's called the Center for the Collaborative Classroom, and the only piece I have looked at is the collaborative literacy, which is language arts. They use it in Dodge City, and I'm actually taking my ELA team next Thursday to see what it's all about in Dodge. And it's really, you know, just foundational stuff. It's not targeted to specific, here's our lesson on bullying, but just, you know, they work in cooperative groups and they build that foundation of here's how we talk to each other respectfully, here's how we, you know, so they integrate all in, and they are like a nonprofit, so they're a little more reasonable than high schools and other things.
So it's curriculum for that, is that what it says?
Yeah, they have just for language arts, for example, they have an intervention program, a primary foundational reading skills program, a comprehension that's K6, and then comprehension K5, and a writing piece that's K6. We're looking especially at the writing. So if you're looking for a new language arts curriculum, they're a great one to explore. I don't know what the other sciences studies, but it's just there are lesser known curriculum companies out there that are starting to see the need to specifically integrate that into their lesson plans, and it's not just one. So I've seen 2 webinars from them, and I'm excited to learn more. But no, that was stuff like that. They pay people a lot for marketing, so we're going to go actually see it in action. And the only other places I can find around here that were in the state of Kansas that were using it for like Kansas City area. But I want to talk to them, but not necessarily go. So,
Like everybody else, we've got a lot going on. I'm gonna pose a question I had from one of my science teachers because that was, we're working on a new math curriculum. We finally have it down to 2. Woo! Yeah. I'm telling you, that's hard to get them to come down to 2. We're also looking at changing our grade cards. Some have been talking about that here too, from pre-K through 2 this year and then later, and that's been a big process. And then, of course, just like everybody else, we're analyzing our pre-K program and making updates because the new grants have come down and trying to figure out how we can do our pre-K program to be competitive with everybody else is around the area. That comes with its own set of challenges. Then I do have a question. Maybe you guys can answer this for me because I am not a science person for middle school, high school, or you can tell me who to ask this question of. I went to both of the science trainings with Lizette just recently, but then my teachers had a quad day on Monday, and we had them meet in their collaborative groups, all the science teachers together and all the social studies. Well, the science teachers have some huge concerns about the science assessment, which Lizette addressed and said that they're making updates and changes with the vocabulary and everything. But one was, it's a two-part question. One was, they were looking at the science demos for grades 5 through 11. Are they all exactly the same, the demos?
I would
Do you guys know?
that.
Okay, then the other question is, they have students, when they were doing the demos and the last time they took the science assessment, the manipulatives on the assessment did not work. Or the kids couldn't figure out how to make them work. So that's why they were hoping to do the demos, but they weren't working. Anybody else experiencing that? And if a student doesn't know how to work the actual manipulative, they want to know, is it okay, you might know this, Molly, for them to go in and show them how to use the manipulative that might be off to the side? Is it okay for them to stop and show them how to do that?
You mean
During the test. And I don't know, because I've never seen the science assessment, so I don't know, wouldn't it be okay? If the student asks something, what do you guys
If they don't grab the mouse, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so.
If they just say,
If they don't take the mouse out of their hand.
If they just tell
for
them, how do I get this to move over? And if you just click on it and drag
I
and
mean,
drop,
I
that's
think
not
it's
helping.
too, but I said, well, let me ask. I mean,
I would say,
I told them, well, gosh, they don't know how, that's not fair to them. That's what's keeping them from answering the question.
And if they haven't had a chance to experience it or practice it, especially.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of times, you know, there's I can't think what it's called, but they have the generic login where they can go in and get familiar with the Kite client and
Right,
use the demos.
demos, yeah.
But if the demos don't have some of those things that they're going to be expected to do, then when they start to take the test, they're like, well, how am I supposed to drag this thing over here? How am I supposed to get this to move here? But then the other issue is, do the teachers know how to tell them to do it?
Right, because they haven't seen it either.
Sometimes you have to play with it to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's like, so that's not uncommon. I mean, and they just want to make sure they were.
I would think it's fine, as long as they're not
And they're just,
doing it for them and like dragging.
but you said,
the
don't
answer
drag the mouse
towards
around
them.
them. Yeah. Okay, well, because I know on the math assessment, that one fourth grade always gets them is the click the X and drag, you have to build the graph.
Mhm.
And the kids know that they said, I can't get the X to move or I
They
want
want
to this, and they said it won't move, and so you have to, so they know that they need to do it, but they struggle with getting it to work. And then the other part to that question was,
We're drawing the line.
some of their special needs kids sometimes can't.
Yeah.
But then I said, well, that's when you go in and put in a
Accommodation
special for it,
accommodation.
yeah.
One thing I
had a person give the help test that had a problem with dragging part of that. I said
They couldn't
the
hold
same
it.
thing. Right.
Yeah, they can't hold
Because you
it.
had to get it right, the tip of
Just
the
right.
wheel had to be right in the box.
Yeah, okay.
So
I wonder if you
it's
could
the
say,
same
where do you
type
want
of
me to
thing.
drag it? Or even just kind of, where do you want me to drag it and then help them? I mean, as long as the kid is telling you. I mean, you know how it is. There's
There's
that fine line.
Zeros. They don't know to click there and then hold the mouse down and click, where you want
Yeah,
to have the
draw a
circle
line.
and have the circle and symmetry or something.
Okay.
Really all I have to share, we got the KLC grant from Kansas Leadership Center, and we have 40 people going through a variety of trainings. So as like the activity we went through today, my hope is that, as we start to go through the trainings, and somebody had mentioned, I can't remember who it was, about having our staff, at first our administrative team, we will be practicing this, what we just did today at every administrator's meeting, kind of like Mindy does. So we're comfortable with going through that. And there's other pieces as well. But then as we go to the third training, our administrators kind of become a trainer of how to go back and help their staff implement this. And as we go start working through KISA, and there are going to be adaptive challenges and issues that you face with KISA and other things as well, that that our buildings are using that process and some of the other things that go along with that to help us make appropriate decisions about things in the future, whether it's an adaptive challenge or a technical issue or whatnot. So I'm kind of excited about that. Yeah. All right. You want to take a quick break?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we come back at 10:45? Moving right along, as DAC updates, I'll let Tammy share a couple of things there, and I'll kind of jump in on the panorama thing too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So Panorama spoke with us a couple of times ago. I don't remember.
About the SES. Okay.
So they've come out with a new update, and Robbie happened
New
to
product.
get or new product, and Robbie happened to get that and shared it with me, and Holly's actually been able to investigate. So I'll let her share a little bit about that new product that they have or what she wants to share.
When we get there in a minute, down below in the attendance and chronic absenteeism section, I talked to Sam Seeker, what's her name, and she sent me some additional links where you can log in and look and see what this new product does. But Panorama, the one we watched when she did our little presentation last time, was gathering information about social emotional information. Whether I can't remember if it was a questionnaire or inventory, whatever you'd like to call it. And it's K through 12. Well, this piece came out in an email a few weeks ago, and it's the same company, but now it is a tool that within your student management system will track chronic absenteeism, behavior, grades, and SEC all together, so you can look at a kid across the board. And those are the 4 areas within MTSS behavior when you're looking at data. Those are the 4 pieces of data that they have you look at. So I don't know if that was done on purpose or not, but when we go in now, like I know how to pull up a chronic absenteeism report, so I've got all those kids. Then you can pull up grades, and that's another separate report. And then we can pull up behavior incidents. It's another report. And then we have the SES, and it's another report. So everything's kind of isolated, but from what I can gather, and I haven't done a webinar on this or anything, is that it brings all of those pieces together so you can look at the whole child in those areas to see what the correlations are between absenteeism, grades, behavior, and maybe some of their ACEs and where they're having some issues with SEC. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. There's lots of links, but maybe between now and next time, or even maybe in April, if there's enough interest and you go in and you look at this and you're like, wow, that's pretty impressive. Sam would be more than happy to conduct like a 15-minute little webinar with us to kind of go through it like she did with the other one. Sometimes it's nice to have somebody explaining it to you and sharing it with you and telling you how much it costs and all of that. But it looked pretty impressive to me. I guess it kind of depends on how much money it costs sometimes is the bottom line.
Next thing, just updating you on a date. We're doing a poverty trauma informed conference in the Kansas City area, and it is on April 25th and 26th, Bridging to Resilience. And then my last thing is something else Robbie wanted to share. Of course, she's our ELL kind of specialist here, and I put the link in there, and I will take you there. It goes right to here. And she said her favorite is scrolling down to content area. And within that, then when you look, there's science and social studies areas. And it's a resource that you can use with your ELL students with pictures and the vocabulary they might see in those courses. And so you can use that. And she said if you or your ELL teachers or had any questions, she would love to. She's like, I really like this resource, and if anybody has any questions, to let me know, and she'll help you out with that. So that's really all I have for updates.
State assessment update. We had our CAC meeting on February 6th. Nothing really out of the ordinary. That group just always talks about finding ways to improve the assessments, making things more efficient and user-friendly for those of us that have to get in and use the Kite portal, et cetera. And you can read the notes there, but the one thing, as a reminder, because it's new this year, is the social studies assessment, and making sure that when you're doing your collection that you enter the proctor name and ID for those assessments and who's going to be grading them, because when that social studies assessment needs to be scored, the proctor has to be assigned to it or it will not appear for them to score. And that's done through your management system. Like when you go into, we use Power School, so I'm doing this off the top of my head, but when you go into the state ID area and you go into kids, and then there's all the fields 1 through whatever, and then you come to all the fields that have to do with assessments, and right below social studies, and most of them, are assigned to number 2, which is the general assessment, or 3. I can't remember what the number is. Is it 2? 2. I think DLM is 3. Right below that, there's 2 more lines, and it'll have proctor name and proctor ID. And you have to, now, don't ask me how that's done. I mean, I know where to go in and do it. My secretaries are told to do this and they know how to do it. But if you don't send that up through the test collection, those social studies assessments are not going to appear there for those 6th, 8th, and 11th grade teachers to score. At some point in time, the social studies information for scoring will be in the Kite portal under the help tab. I don't think they're there yet.
February 23rd or something.
That's supposed to be coming. But it's supposed to be under that little, you go to the help tab and then there's a list of things and then it should be there. I honestly am probably behind some of this because we've never scored them in our district. I was a slacker and didn't do it. So it'll be new for me. But that's where the information for the training, which I believe from what I understand is like an hour, and then they can go directly into scoring after that. So those of you that have scored before, was it like 2 or 3 minutes per paper or something like that to score? And how you decide to do that, whether that you expect teachers to do that on their planning or during PLC, or you give them a half a day to do it. That's totally up to you and your teachers. Bottom line is it just has to be done.
So the specific proctor that is named has to do the score.
Yeah.
Well, my understanding is that in the Kite portal, once you've got test records uploaded, you have students loaded.
Can you change
into
it?
Kite, I think you can go in and then add more proctors
Oh, okay.
to a test
So
section.
the pool of proctors.
I think you
Well, because last time when we graded, we had everybody graded.
Well, right now you're only supposed to have social studies people do
I
it.
think you can
That's
have
what we have,
anybody
that's what we
grade
have all of our social studies doing.
I think you can have anybody grade that you want to, so, but who gets into the Kite system to report the score has to be in the Kite system.
That's a good question, because,
So you could put you, probably.
well,
Well, no, they told us this time they want it to be social.
they want it to be a
studies.
social studies teacher, because it doesn't jump into English language arts anymore. I'll find out more about that, and bring it back next time, but
Because they said in October.
You could be
having
right.
15 of the
maybe there's another place where you can go in and add more information to the Kite portal. I just haven't, the only thing I've done so far is with the test upload. I've assigned them there. I haven't done anything in Kite.
Well, if you have a new teacher though, that's not in Kite, you can't send up their test records. I found that out the hard way, because I have a new 8th grade teacher.
Yeah, I put all my,
2 years ago.
yeah, you have to add all your people in Kite.
Didn't they extend when that needs to be done, maybe?
Yeah.
What,
Is
11?
it, I'd have to look at the date, but they did, it's in that, that one pager? I think it's,
That's quick.
but as a result, I think it has to be done by the end of the testing window. And it was earlier, like in the middle of the window, so they were
So that's
saying,
27th,
so what?
April 27th, it has to be done.
No,
I thought they extended. No, I meant.
When did they say that?
The scoring's May now,
Do
unless.
you remember the date?
That's
May 11th?
That's what I thought.
But now you just won't get the reports
You
back.
won't get the report back by the end of the year, whereas if you do.
Had we done it earlier. Not a very big cat member, am I? Okay. Any other questions about state assessments? Again, it's something where I can pose the questions to Lee and bring them back and we can talk more about the social studies, for example, and the proctoring, and if additional entries can be made into the Kite portal, so there's more flexibility on who can score what.
Is anybody testing on Chromebooks?
Yes.
All,
Yes.
all Chromebooks.
Okay, so we just got that email that said you had to put them in kiosk mode to do that.
Is that the way, have you not done it before?
Not on Chromebooks,
Has it
no.
always been that way?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it just be, you log on your Chromebook and you authenticate and then you log off. And you're not actually logged on
Right.
when you test.
So doesn't your tech guy have to put it in the system as a kiosk app?
They do, I know that for
Yes.
sure, yeah, they have to go in and do it.
Yeah, and but once they do it, I mean, we've got our NWA, our Kite,
Age
there's
Plus.
three, there's three of them.
It's in a little, ours is
Yeah,
set up
they're-
that way too. And your tech people should know how to do that.
Yes. I forwarded
I
that
kind of
email
stay
and
out
just
of,
said-
I just
I
forward it.
just-
There you go, Barb.
There you go.
Good luck.
Take it.
I don't want to know.
FYI, in case you didn't know.
Absolutely.
But if they try to, if they're logged on and try to get on,
It won't.
they'll be.
And sometimes teachers will forget. I've had a couple, they're like, I can't get on, it's not working, and it's because they're not going to the kiosk, they're trying to log them in a different way, and they're like, it's not working, and they just forget.
Yes.
So you may
And
have
you
to
have
provide
to
some
input as well.
instructions on how to do that, especially
Yes.
the first time. Open education resources. This is, I went to this, let's see, Teresa was there, and Shannon Dinkle was there. She's not here from Fort Hays. I think those were, you were there, you guys were there. So I'm just gonna speak briefly, but then you guys throw your 2 cents in, and really just talking about helping us become familiar with open education resources, what those are, how to go about, I guess the planning process for locating those, implementing, using in your district, and different content areas came and shared, or from different districts about what they've done and resources or open education resources that they're using. But there was a lot of discussion, which I appreciated, about if you're wanting districts to do this, this is great in theory, but there needs to be some type of training or professional learning that goes on to provide us and our teachers, or those that are being charged with figuring out what open education resources that they want to use, because if you don't, I think you're going to get a dismal product. So you guys jump in and maybe you interpreted it a little bit different or took away something a little bit different than I did.
Other than really the Eureka map, I mean, there's not a lot of complete programs out there where you're going to say, okay, we're going to adopt this. Teacher's going to have to do a lot of work on their own. You're going to have to plan for it. And it's a change of mindset and a different professional development.
Oh, you did.
I mean, it's more another resource that you could get rather than this is what you're
This
going
is
to
it.
adopt.
Maybe as supplemental.
Yeah, I think what I came up with is, I was looking for options to help staff to get away from like teacher to teacher as the go-to.
Vetted.
And to have a district supported OER concept, not as a full-blown adoption. I wasn't gonna go in and say, we're adopting a math OER model. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
But what I was looking at is for supplementals, to be able to tell a teacher, okay, you're looking for some additional things in this area like science. We know of these particular places, they've been vetted pretty well, we feel real comfortable with them, and we would support your use of students. And that's what I was going for. Got a few things out of that. But I don't know how to scale this sort of thing up. It would scare the hell out of me to try to put this together something.
It would be stressful.
So
If they're not fully, they got to jump in.
it looks like there's some districts that have done it pretty well.
Oh, it was in my. One thing that it was toward the end, Tina Ellsworth, and if you go to that training document, there's tons of links to many of these resources that are available to you. So one thing I did when Tina Ellsworth was going through her presentation, and it was on history, government, and social studies, oh my gosh, there were all kinds of valuable resources that you could send your teachers to, supplementary, to kind of dig into and use above and beyond, or in kind of meld with the adopted curriculum. And without any kind of training, I would never move forward with open education resources being the sole curriculum that I'm using. And we told them, if you really want districts to do this, KSDE or service, whoever, they've got to provide professional learning so teachers and or administrators know how to truly go in and do this. And the other thing that our group expressed to them was the fact that it would be really nice if the State Department or someone went in and vetted out a lot of these resources. So let's say you train teachers on, okay, we're going to use open education resources. We're going to go through the evaluation process and selection, kind of like you do with your textbooks or your other curriculum. And then actually the state having already vetted out, not that it's a conclusive list, but a number of ELA, science, social studies, and math open education resources that they've already looked at that are, I'll call it approved or are worthy.
Science has done that.
Yes, it's
Science has done that.
So, but kind of having a list would be good.
There's some other state education agencies that we talked about. Utah was one. There were 3 or 4 that were kind of that
They've
main
gotten.
feature guy, that he referenced, I thought. So
Maybe
that-
so.
I didn't get on those sites, so I don't know what those other states have done.
I haven't either.
Maybe they have.
But it was pretty, it was interesting, and it's something to think about, and really bottom line, if there was something in place that helped us find ways, I see it as a money saving, if I didn't have to spend $350,000 on ELA curriculum next time, wow, that'd be great. I could use it for something else.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to go adopt something
That
online
exercise
that's going to be
teaching
a
work.
disaster either. I'm not going to do it. Nope. Maybe that's just me being a chicken, or I just don't trust it.
I thought the conversations, and maybe it's just at our table that we had about, do we have staff members that feel confident in their skill level to be able to truly vet scope and sequence progression of skills?
No.
And to be able to put together a coherent curriculum, beyond just some general fields about school.
I say no.
I don't think so.
I don't even,
other than
sometimes
just-
I would need support in that too. And that's where the PD thing was like, this is not a good deal unless people are truly trained in this, I don't want to call it a structure, but that they know what they're doing when they're going into this
And if
process.
it's not, then it's not any better than teacher pay teachers.
Yeah, because
Or
they
interest.
haven't been to school and they didn't get you might have one staff member maybe that truly could go in without getting trained, and it's probably us, and I still would not even feel comfortable. But they just don't know.
Yeah, and the reality is, to some degree, because we haven't done a good job of adopting and keeping up with the state standards, frankly, curriculum resources. The
Yeah.
break is already happening. We've already got teachers who are doing this, doing the best. But when you start thinking truly about the true progression of skill, I don't know. It's not
A
good.
little scary. Okay, I'm gonna skip the next section because Mindy's not here and Angie's not here, and that's just on occasion when they are here, kind of giving us an update. I know, is there giving us some updates on how it's going, and hopefully Mindy's usually here, so I'm not sure why she's not today. Angie not so much, but getting them to share out next time and kind of where they're at on all of the redesign pieces. All right, I put Tammy in charge of the next activity because it's collaborative, and you all know that's not my area of expertise. So go for it, Tammy.
All right.
Hello, and welcome to the module on individual plan of study. With the invention of the Global Positioning System, GPS for short, the paper map has become a thing of the past. Instead of wrestling with a large fold-out map as we're speeding down the highway, today we simply plug in an address and the GPS leads us to our desired destination. And if we prefer not to take the suggested route, the GPS provides us with options. In many ways, an individual plan of study, also known as an IPS, is like a GPS. It's a tool students can use to plot a course that will lead them to their destination. However, an IPS allows for something a GPS often doesn't: Students are able to define their own idea of success and build a plan to get there instead of having their destination selected for them. Today's job market requires employees to have a higher level of education than ever before. In fact, by 2020, the Georgetown Center for Education and the Workforce predicts that more than 70% of the jobs in Kansas will require a post-secondary credential in addition to a high school diploma. 70%. So what does that mean for the student who doesn't graduate or who doesn't earn a post-secondary credential of some sort? The likelihood of those students ever making it into at least the middle class becomes slim at best. So why an individual plan of study? To lead the world in the success of each student must be able to identify what success looks like for him or her. The IPS is the tool and process designed to do just that. It helps students, beginning in middle school, and their families build a plan that will help that student identify and explore talents and interests. A lack of planning has derailed many people and projects over the years. Our students are no different. Extensive planning is critical to the success of any worthy endeavor. In some cases, a student who graduates high school and doesn't immediately enter college may be better off than a student who goes straight into college with no plan and drops out before graduating. That student now has no degree and is saddled with debt. Think about how different that outcome would be with the right plan in place. To recap, an IPS is a product developed and maintained by the student, beginning in the middle grades, a process adopted by the school to assist the student in developing a meaningful IPS, a means for a school to personalize learning for each student. Let's talk for a moment about the components of an effective IPS. First, a good IPS will help students identify talents and interests related to broader career fields through the use of multiple interest inventories. Over time, patterns will begin to emerge, which creates an opportunity for dialogue and exploration. Students and parents should meet with school professionals at least 2 times a year to review the student's IPS and make adjustments. Next, a list of all high school courses mapped according to career interest areas. This helps the student identify and select courses needed for particular career areas. In essence, providing them with the opportunity to try before you buy. Chances are, if you don't like science, veterinary science may not be the most rewarding career option for you, no matter how much you love animals. An effective IPS should include a post-secondary plan. Now, I know what you're thinking. A post-secondary plan for a middle schooler? They change their minds as often as they change their moods. It's never too early to start exploring all the options for post-secondary education. Not all careers require a 4-year degree. Some may require a 2-year degree, while others may require the completion of a certification. Understanding requirements helps students and parents make better informed decisions. Finally, an effective IPS will include an electronic portfolio that includes the student's projects, assessments, resume, job shadow summaries, etc. Students are then ready to share their best work with prospective colleges and employers. So we've talked about what an IPS is. Now it's time to talk about what it isn't. An IPS is not meant to track students into certain educational paths aligned with certain careers. It's also not meant to culminate with an 18-year-old making a career decision. It's simply a tool and process for the student to chart his or her unique path by exploring or trying on careers in a more authentic manner. Just as important as identifying areas of interest, the IPS process also helps students identify career areas that do not interest them, helping them narrow down the field when they're ready to make post-secondary plans. Want to learn more about individual plans of study or trainings taking place in your area? Visit the KSDE website at www.ksde.org. Thank you for your time and attention to this module on individual plans of study.
So what we've been doing is then going in and looking at the booklet and kind of answering a few of these questions. So in front of you, hopefully everyone has a card. If you would grab your card and you're going to look at the lower left, you should have a word. And if you would stand up and find your opposite, lower right. Sorry, thanks, Holly. Okay, so I know east, west, north, south. I don't know right from left. So Find your opposite. Find your opposite.
Woman, man. Are you woman?
I'm a man.
Oh, you're looking for.
I'm a man.
You're my man.
I am.
Okay.
Oh, here, I'm down. I can be down.
Okay. You're down for it.
I can be down.
You're down.
So question number 1, and I'll read it in case I don't know if you guys can see back that far. In what ways will an IPS for each student beginning in the middle school help students as they navigate from high school to post-secondary and or to careers? So how will starting that IPS in the middle school help them post-secondary?
I think they're real thinking about it's early. It's a real thinking about the possibilities. Thinking
Just to start exposure, there's way more than just moms, receptionists, like there's all this other stuff out there. I just,
maybe too.
Kids can start.
Those kind of things.
Yeah.
But, too, that's the place where we do have some shop.
That they make it so, and then it's okay to
So on,
change.
so they start to get some
Start touching other things.
right.
Pretty soon,
And what they said is, the more exposure they get, they can find what they like, but I think there's more value. I know what I don't. And so,
I 100% agree. Even if I don't care. I actually what is eliminated.
my daughter went to see
Once they stay in inventory, it's like,
I don't want to be a nurse.
There
That's
you
not
go.
my, so at least she eliminated that. She could see it.
Right, absolutely. I think there's a power in that combination.
Yeah.
well, they are, but it's something that this area is within 100 of because kids, they probably say,
So I think that whole
She said, I have a son who's been to 2 colleges and my son did the 6.5-year plan. And if we'd eliminated some stuff along the way, right? I mean, I get it. As a parent, I could have.
My daughter's a sophomore now. She's kind of eliminated some things. Hopefully going forward, we're sitting right direction.
I agree. This is his favorite line. Why college is not a post-secondary plan.
Right.
From the standpoint that, oh, I'm just going to go to college and figure it out.
Well, it used to be in
Right.
the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. But no,
Okay,
what are you going to do in college?
what's the formula? You go to college,
Right.
you get a degree, and you get a job.
Right.
Not the same.
It's not the same. All right, I'm going to switch you up. I want you to look at in the bottom left quadrant, you have a large green shape. Match your green shape. I don't care what's inside of it. Go find your matches to the green shape.
Triangle, diamond.
So color doesn't, all you're looking at is this. All the green circles get together. Okay. So you guys are looking at this next question over here on the right. What indicators could our school district community focus on that would speak to the effectiveness of the IPS program? What indicators could we focus on that would speak to the effectiveness of the IPS program.
Like the case indicators? Or the-
No, so what you're coming up with as indicators. What are the things that you would look at? If IPS is working for us, what would we look at?
Yeah.
You don't offer enough different classes. So we really like how we get that. Seeing what we don't offer, they see it in that direction. Yeah. There's also that data that kids are out. So if they're not, then you know that they're starting in the right place.
Absolutely.
And they think they have really no idea. They go to the right end, they go. And sometimes they go back.
So I guess that's
You're identifying the ones that are falling.
I just see what classes I'm going to college.
Which is fine. Because that's in the teachers. Which is important, and so we have to be able to. And that's okay. And you give us
I wouldn't.
They say it's waste that would be successful. You don't need to operate like that. I don't know.
You know, music school was kind of like that. And I think just traditionally kind of perpetuate that, and kids are like, oh,
That they might,
you know, and then they have a plan.
I don't even realize, I mean, there's like, and then they can remember, and there's a description of the video that he talks about. They have all that information.
I mean,
I would be going
and then you've got the whole question of who to try this message.
Do more than
And this is the Eastern Coast.
Take about 30 seconds to wrap.
There's a sign. Scoop dog. And it's like a business or kid. Like a little square. I still get a little come around and scoop it poop in your yard. Scoop dog. That's scoop dog. That's option.
I don't want to do that for the rest of my life, but I can see how you're in middle school or, you know,
And they have those things.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause you. Looking in the bottom left quadrant. So you're in that same space, but now make your arrows match. So I need a red arrow pointing up, or I need a double arrow pointing. So go find people who have the same arrow as you. Your arrow has to be the same.
Arrow right.
Yes,
This is creating, there should be 40 people under your.
We have a blue arrow. We have a blue arrow.
red arrow.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I don't divide by 4 here. So here's your next question. What are the necessary conditions or resources that need to be put into place for the IPS program to flourish at school? What are the necessary conditions and resources that need to be put in place for the IPS to flourish in school?
The time they do, and schedule schedule where, whether it's a class or another class. Even if it's one time a week or once a month or a seminar.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's
I agree.
also they have to have that opportunity to get out there and talk about it. And I think that part, especially with multiple subjects that are already busy with
Yeah.
everything.
Around this.
But I think we can
We
put
do
on
it
a
down,
challenge.
right? We do that. And we do it.
Yeah, I don't know
So
where.
we favors.
I know. They talk about it.
I'm not sure what grade they do it.
So everybody's.
It's not-
We still should be just starting.
I think it's so big.
Part of it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it's.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I get it.
Mhm. Yeah, I did. Do that, yeah.
No, because we were trying to learn. And so I think that's like never.
Yes.
And yet they
Sure.
Yes.
All of our teachers, that we had that same.
I don't know.
One high school counselor.
Oh, she did. So, what's?
I'm gonna bring us back together, and this one I do want to have a little discussion about. I want to, what are some of those key components we need to have in place that you guys came up with? What are some of those key names?
PD.
So, so put an asterisk there, actually at CTE conference, and then in their night meetings or whatever, that the KSPE group met, which Jody and Joni are a part of. And there's probably coming out with a next round to take it deeper. That's really going to focus on the career development piece. And I'm not going to pretend that I can tell you all the components of that, but I mean, that piece of being able to have those meaningful conversations. Because when I had that conversation, I said, so what is it you want this level of people to know that, you know, maybe either we made mistakes the first, you know, first time through, or what is that structure or infrastructure has to be like set solid. She goes, like, we ran into places where it actually was violating negotiated agreement. And the teacher said, our seminar time is a non-teaching prep. And now you're asking me to teach in that prep. I mean, you know, so it's really, I'm just kind of putting it up to really be thinking about. She goes, because the IPS is not career proving, doing, you know, it's way more than that. And building in those times for those meaningful individual conversations with students, how are we going to do that as a system? You know, and so and then I got a bachelor's in mathematics, people. I am supposed to have a career development conversation with you. Like, you know, I mean, there's that fear of our high school teachers going, what? One more layer that maybe isn't really totally in their comfort zone, and how do I have that? And so really helping them with that. I mean, you guys say professional learning. How do we make that meaningful? And so I'll take your cards back, but I laid in front of your set for each of you. In the back is
the directions. So like I can create groups of 2, I can create groups of 3, I can create 6 groups, I can create 4 groups. I can, however you want to do that, and it kind of gets us differently from that.
You're welcome.
All right. The next section is just, again, it's an ongoing, so that we'll kind of talk a little bit about these and kind of move forward. But I did add the panorama student success information in there, so that might be something over the course of the next month. Go in there, take a look at what it is, and then if you're interested, we can talk about it next time, and then maybe have Sam come in and do a demonstration. And if we're not, that's okay too. And maybe one district likes it, and you can just contact her, and she'll take you through a webinar or whatever you'd like to do. And then there's that other resource that's in there that as you are starting to look at chronic absenteeism in your districts, and maybe some people haven't even gotten that far yet, which is fine. But Attendance Works is another valuable resource that has great information about sharing. I put a couple links in here with the videos, so if you were introducing this concept to your administrative team, helping them understand what chronic absenteeism is really important, because it's really just time that kids are not at school. So it can even be when they're at athletics, or it can be excused absences, I guess is what I'm saying. Because when kids are gone, they're obviously not learning. So just great resources to kind of get you started and start learning about chronic absenteeism. As a reminder, you can find your chronic absenteeism report in the authenticated website under AMOS, and along the left-hand side toward the bottom, that's where your school and district reports are housed. So if you go to the authenticated website, if you're not assigned to AMOS, you can get access to it, and then your superintendent can approve it. But if you are, you just click on AMOS, and over to the left, hopefully it's still there. They take stuff down all the time. But along that left-hand column are the reports for chronic absenteeism for each grade. And it kind of gives you too, like what the state average is as well, and then your district average, I think. Any questions about absenteeism, chronic absenteeism, before we move on? How many of you have had the chance to look at your chronic absenteeism reports? Might be something, if you haven't, it might be something to go in and take a look at it. It's what we discovered from it is that there's obviously something that our high school is doing wrong when they're reporting out absences, because our high school chronic absenteeism rate it's way beyond what we know it's an issue, but not as much as of an issue as the numbers that are showing up in the report. So we have been working to figure out what is it in Power School, or what setting is not correct that we need to fix, so our data is correct at the high school level. We also noticed that there's definitely certain grade levels that have more absenteeism than others. Kindergarten is a huge one. You'll find that probably too. I mean, it's probably very much a trend. Textbook and curriculum resources. This is just a place, again, as you are looking at that first link where you can type in information about what you're using or what you adopt. It just helps with efficiency when others in the group are getting ready to look at things or vet things out. Remember, down below are some additional resources that were provided by KSDE regarding, you get in there and you can go in and see how some of the curriculum, if it's not brand new, how it's been rated, to know, I guess, what's the good and the bad and the ugly about different things. And then down at the bottom are some of the rubrics, et cetera, that maybe could be used when evaluating. So that's just a document that's always there. The next one, and we'll probably spend a majority of the meeting on this, so I'm going to skip it and come back. But remember, there's the dynamic speakers list. So if you have somebody that you brought out recently that was awesome, type their information in there, a little description, because I know I'm getting ready to try to find somebody for welcome back beginning of the year, and it's always such a struggle. But I mean, it's helpful for the group to have some names and contacts to look at. And then future topics, as you know, this afternoon we're doing ages and stages, and we have some other things on this list. We need to decide what would we like to focus on next month, so I can have the appropriate person or people in to talk about that topic. What we've got left are sex ed curriculum options, K through 2 phonics, poverty, MTSS, ESOL, chronic absenteeism, Kansas Star. That might be one, it's timely. If you haven't selected that, that might be a good one to have in the near future. Most likely to succeed video, how to use the Gallup results. So anything in there jumping out at you as a fun, not a fun topic, but something we need to look about? Nothing's fun anymore, but necessary, timely. I'm just being negative, Nancy, today.
Lots of stuff with poverty, and one thing that I would add to like family that, and do those two things go? Sure.
Other thoughts? Poverty, family engagement. How many of you have not selected how you're going to collect your data for KISA? Has everybody determined that you're going to use Google Docs or Google Drive, or you're going to use Kansas Star? Because you have to have some kind of a portal or place to house everything. Has everybody figured that out?
To hear how everybody's using whatever they're using too.
If you're titled, don't you have to use Kansas Star?
Yep, and you have additional requirements. So like we're going to use Kansas Star, and we've been trained on it, and we'll have her come back out again. But the two title schools, they have some additional requirements that they have to fill out above and beyond the other schools. But the nice thing is it's all in that one portal.
Are you going to have everybody use Kansas
Yes.
Star? Even ones who don't? That's what we
Yep.
were talking about.
And she came out, and I let my people decide, because we are a Google district, and they unanimously decided that Kansas Star was, for them, was better than even, we love Google, was better than Google Drive, because it has some of the wise ways and the PD part and I guess the answers. Here's how you go in and you solve a problem, or succeed under the goals that you're trying to accomplish. So
I think we may be doing sort of a hybrid where we're going to use the Kansas Star as like you're saying, the improvement process portion of it, but we may maintain most of our documents and archiving our record keeping
in Google.
like that in Google.
That might be
We'll just
easier.
add links to the file sharing system.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Mostly just because the teams that are working on this know Google Drive and understand how to get into that materials that way, so we can put all of our agendas, supporting documents in there. But we see the Kansas Star is more maybe the OBTs that we need, and then using the
Wise ways.
indicators in that process to just keep some track.
Okay. All right, so back to our list. Anything specific you want to discuss in the afternoon next time? Come on. How many of you have done poverty simulations or poverty training in your district? Nothing's popping out at you? Okay, I guess I'll just pick something. You sure?
Well, on the MTSS, what would that entail? Because we don't have it. I don't know if we would get it. I just get frustrated that we are not
Right.
able to implement, but I mean, I love.
Probably, and I, you know, just as we had a gal from Tazen, we just do reading. We do math loosely. We truly do reading with Fidelity through the Kansas MTSS model, but we don't do the behavior at all. So we had the gal from Tazen, she did a Zoom, kind of went through the introductory piece about what the components and the tiering is. I mean, it's the same for reading, math, and behavior. What's in there is different, but the structure is similar, I guess. So maybe she could, how many of you use MTSS for reading? Math?
I do both, we do both, kind of. I mean,
Kind of,
like,
and behavior.
well, in other words, I like take turns, like.
Yeah, and I know there's an integrated
for a
model
week,
too.
but sometimes it's reading and sometimes it's math, we kind of split it up.
Right.
So you flip-flop like 1 week reading and 1 week math?
Well, I have some tier students that do mostly all reading, and then I have part of the other group and we do math activities, but we only do it, and it's like 2 days, 3 days.
Right.
And then, of course, you have your behavior SCC part, which we're not doing, but we're looking at the data like chronic absenteeism, behavior, attendance in the SCC to see that's where we're at now. Do we truly need to have an MTSS system in place for behavior, or can we just look at that data and maybe there's a couple areas that are standing out that are deficient and then we deal with it on our own and figure something out? Doesn't mean you have to do the formal MTSS, but
Well, I guess, and if you're gonna do a formal MTSS in reading, math, behavior, whatever, how is that looking? How are school districts getting that scheduled?
Different for everybody.
it is.
Well,
Yeah.
how does that work? Because I know on KISA it says that, you're gonna have that K through 12.
That's one of
So
your foundational,
how is that ever?
like we're not
how's
even
that
there.
ever gonna look?
Yeah, because it has said you have to have all three.
Yeah,
Oh,
all
yeah, all
three,
three.
all three.
So we'll never be there. But I mean, but the things that we're doing is we're looking at the behavior MTSS to see where we're at and if we need it. So think about KISA, it's progress. And what are you doing to
Right.
inform, in our case, inform us about the behavior MTSS piece and where are we at with it? We're looking at the data to see where our strengths and our deficiencies
So will
are.
that always be what the KISA where it's gonna be,
Yep.
the K through 12 is always just gonna be,
Progress.
well, are you working for,
You-
I just wanna see if
I think
anybody
so.
ever actually achieved.
With that one, and I think some districts have the integrated model and they're doing all three, which is great.
Yeah.
But my belief is that as long as you're showing you're making progress and you're doing things each year, that's what people
That's
want to
so
see.
important.
You know, otherwise we're all gonna fail. I mean,
Well,
we
that's
are
what-
doing all that
Right.
stuff
That's
and we
what-
didn't get the high, whatever the performance rating is. I didn't even give us the lowest one because we're just doing reading.
Yeah.
But what are we doing? What are we doing to
Mhm.
improve our MTSS and, baby steps and looking at, do we need MTSS behavior or do we need formal math? And that's just me. That's what I think. So. All right. So do you just want me to pick something or a couple for the afternoon or?
I'd maybe echo the family engagement.
Okay.
A broad context. We're gonna get the Kansas family engagement survey, student teacher, or parent teacher conferences here.
Mhm.
Have 15-question family engagement survey. We have
Mhm.
survey that kind of stuff. So
I would be.
I don't know what we'll do with those big changes.
I would be interested to, I mean, that relationships, families and communities, that's what we
Yeah.
scored lowest in. So we're gonna have to be looking at that because we stink.
It's everything's like soliciting family feedback, like all in family, every.
Okay, so, okay, I'm picking it. Are we
Yeah,
good?
I
Yep.
guess fine.
Now I gotta figure out who's gonna do it because it's not gonna be me. All right, let's see. March?
Yeah, I
Do we have a March meeting? Everybody check, because I know I was thinking we had 2 months off.
I was thinking not too, because our spring breaks are all.
You see 'em
We
here?
have, what ACEs in March and.
I think March was let me look, let me
Yeah.
scroll through March.
Those dates on the
I'm not seeing it.
put this date, you need to put the dates on the.
I'm not seeing it till April.
No, we don't.
13th.
Nope, we don't. Not till,
April 13th.
you are correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
what
I'll
I
put
see.
April.
Thinking assessments.
Yeah, everybody will be, well, you won't, yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Okay, so the last activity, I have a Zoom meeting at noon.
Okay.
So I'm just thinking, if we're still
Okay.
going on an activity, I might have you start
Okay.
it up. All right,
Bring everybody on.
so back to Kisa. I'm not sure that today we're going to focus on a few things with Kisa. The first one is, and I'm not, honestly, I don't ever recall getting an email about this. I am the chair for Coffeyville, and they sent me this workbook. The workbook from the very beginning was in a weird, was it PDF fillable? Okay, so I couldn't fill it out at the same time. Well, and if you could, I couldn't figure it out as Coffeyville. Well, she sent me a Google Doc. So it is in a Google format, the link there for you. So think about it like this. I'm chairing Coffeyville, and Laura, whoever, is the one that's kind of filling out information, or say she's like us in our district. And we will use that one document throughout the course of the 5 years or the 2 years, depending on where they're at in the process. When I talked to Jeanette Novo the other day, and we were asking about this KISA workbook and what the purpose of it was, she said really using it for historical information as you're going through the 5-year process. So let's say that I retire and I am somebody's KISA and I move away or I pass away or something. This document can be referred back to as the historical piece. So if a new chair or a new committee member came on board, they could look at that. Now, that information is also valuable for when you go in and you're filling out the reports online and such, depending on what responsibilities you have. And then the confusion was there was something in the newsletter that came out from Brad Newswander, it was in January, about having to turn this in. Well, what Jeanette said was, this is a document that is at the art committee. If they were to request it and wanted to look at additional pieces of information, they might ask to see your workbook. You're not gonna, and you might keep it in your Google Drive, which you would, or somewhere, so it could be accessed in case somebody else wanted to look at it. Say the ARC was like, we need to see more information. Can we look at your workbook? But it's there.
Agree.
So
Agree.
that KISA workbook is there for you. I think it's in view only, so you just make a copy of it and then you can make it your own. And I personally would use that, especially if you're a Google district or not, because you can share it with the district and your OVT, at least your OVT chair. The other one, you can't do that. So you're gonna have two separate documents working. The other thing about this new workbook, if you go into it, and if you were looking at them side to side, the new one has information in there about,
I'll click on
just
it
a
so I
second,
can see it.
the foundational structures, the compliance items, and the 5th R results. The other one did not have anything in there. And as you know, when your people are visiting, those are things every single year that you have to talk about: the foundational structures, the compliance items, and the 5th R, and those things that, there's 9 things that fit under there. And what progress, where are you at, and what progress are you making? So that information is in that Google workbook, and I could be wrong, but I don't remember seeing that
It was not.
in the other one. Do you?
It
no.
was not. It was not. I'll go back.
So, yeah, so it's in there.
The confusion that I had about this was that on the conference calls that Jeanette has posted,
Mm-hmm.
she's been stating that the OVT chair needs to complete this workbook for the school or system that you're
Right.
chairing. And I don't
But-
understand.
And I talked to her the other day, because when you look at that workbook, whenever I go into that workbook and I'm putting together our presentation for our OVT visit, and I'm pretty much going through the workbook, and what we're going to share in our agenda is what's in that workbook. So I will take stuff from my slideshow and I will answer the questions in the workbook. But there are definitely places in the workbook where it says like recommendation and celebrations. To me, that's where the OVT chair is going to go in. Now, it doesn't mean that we couldn't go in and type some other things in it, but I see it as both sides going in and filling in the information as you go. Because as the district that's going to have the visit, it gives me the guidance of the information that needs to be shared out during that OVT visit. So why wouldn't I just fill it in as we go? And then I have some type of a slideshow that has the same information in it, kind of summarized, that my DDLT is going to get up and present in a more, I don't want to call it dog and pony, but really just presenting the information so we're not just scrolling through the workbook.
So you are filling out your own notebook in your district,
Well,
or you're filling out this Google.
so, okay, so as you go through and there's questions on, go back to the workbook. So, okay. Okay, so one of the very first things that, on the sample agenda or that's on our agenda is that you have to talk about the needs assessment process.
Yes.
So I am creating a slideshow, and one or two slides is on the needs assessment process, and I'm answering those questions in the slideshow.
Oh, but not on here.
Yes, I'll
Yes,
do it
ma'am.
both, because I want that information. I want the OVT person to have that information, but then it's also in a slideshow that's a little bit or more organized and maybe a more visually attractive.
And that'll have all your links and stuff within that slideshow.
Yep.
Because I had that same question. We started filling that out online, and then we heard that, no, the OVT chair is supposed to do that, and here we
I
had
think that's silly.
half of it filled out.
There's no way that
No.
the two districts that I'm sharing, I don't have enough information to go.
So think of it this way.
Well, and if I'm your OVT chair, I want to read what you did in the process. And if I have a question, Monty, can you tell me a little bit more about this? Then I'm going to ask that. But I would think I wouldn't want to rewrite a small paragraph about something I wasn't there for.
Yes.
Okay.
But
Yeah, let's do it. And then we'll answer some of the other questions. And then like on our slideshow, again, it's going through and I'm trying, for each of the sections that's in here, we have a slideshow, and I had different people on the DLT filling it. Like I was responsible for this section, but we had groups of people that were responsible for the relationships part, the relevance, and they're presenting out the findings, the evidence, and kind of where we're at. There's 3 different
So
pieces
your
that
DLC people are,
they're helping.
fill that out.
Yeah, and maybe next time I could even put our slideshow in there if you want to see it. I hate to, like, I don't want anybody to think, because you all know how I'm so overly detailed, so it might be a little overwhelming for you. But what's the intent though? So you have the slideshow. It answers all the questions. Why wouldn't I just go in there and fill that out instead of Jill Lackmeyer coming and like is desperately like trying to type all that in there and look off my slideshow? Why wouldn't I just fill it out? Because it's all in our presentation.
Right, okay.
Don't you agree? Yes. And then if they want to type in, let's say Jill comes to our visit or I'm at Coffeeville and I'm listening to the presentation and I'm typing, or maybe the other OVT people, we're typing in some recommendations, because you're going to have a conversation about it with them. These are some things, wow, this is great. Here's a couple of recommendations that you might want to work on between now and next spring when we come out and visit again.
Okay, so I just want to clarify again. So when I go back, I am telling what you're doing. This Google form is taken directly off of that online OVT form. Is that right?
Pretty close.
But you're not filling out both. You're not filling out that and the online.
No, you have to do online too.
Oh, so you're doing both.
Or your OVT. You have to do the one in the authenticated app. That you have to submit that.
That's
It's a little bit different, but some of it's going to carry
the
over.
initial. That's
Right.
the initial.
Well, and all the that you have to, that we fill out, but a lot of that's going to be the same as these questions that you're answering here, so you can copy and paste them over. Then there's a few things that are different. But the workbook, in my opinion, helps the team, the district, and the OVT work together, year by year. This is what we did in year 1, and then it's going to progress to year 2, or if you started in 3, it'd be 3, 4, and 5. And there's that historical piece, so you can just continue to work on that and go back to it. Think of it as I'll call it the Bible. I mean, really you can kind of go back and see your progress. It's your timeline. A historical map, really. Okay? But this document makes it possible. That other one, you couldn't have done it with. So don't ask me where it came from.
So, I'll tell you this, we meet at KPLT meets next week, which Jeanette always has a section. I will, if anything is different than what you just shared, I'll make sure that you guys know it. If she's like, absolutely not, or whatever, I mean, if anything is different, I will definitely let you know. I've made myself a note to ask that question.
Okay. So one thing to kind of think about is that when you're think about your foundational and your compliance structures, and I'm not going to spend time on this, but when you go into your workbook, think about what is it that you're doing with your foundational and your compliance structures. Have you gone through those and discussed those with an administrative team or your DLT to say, okay, here's the foundational structures. This is what it is. This is where we're at. And we kind of have something called a growth plan, kind of where we're headed and what we want to do maybe in the next year to improve upon that area. And that's really what we'll share out with the OVT. Very summarized, but they do expect you to go through and share information about foundational and compliance, and then there's under the 5 R's, there's 9 categories, like kindergarten readiness is one, civic engagement, high school graduation, post-secondary success, some of those things. And it's in the workbook, so it should give you good guidance on that. Then the next one, and this was something that I think we had created it last year and we hadn't started filling it in, but there's that evidence directory, and I had asked you to fill some of these in before you came, which you didn't, and that's okay. But one thing to think about when you are, even for your PISA visit, when you're thinking about what kind of evidence do we have, for example, under relationships, because there's 4 component areas in each area. Under relationships with staff, students, family, and community. So when you go into that rubric, and this is how I did it with my DLT, when you're looking at, and this may be common sense to everybody, but so you start with, here's staff. So here's the criteria, and what I had them do is I want you to go all the way over to the right. And no, we're probably not, they have their building needs assessments and they're all filled out and highlighted, but as a district, they read the modeling, and from that description, it'll give you or throw out, it'll be very obvious what some of the evidence is that you might want to collect for that. So the first one says, provides a structural model to facilitate collaboration in learning communities during ongoing protected designated times. Conducts surveys, and evaluates results of PLC work to ascertain professional learning needs. So think about what kind of evidence, if you had to show something or to help you monitor progress of how you're doing on that particular criteria, what might be an example? If you're at the modeling, I mean, and you always want to try to get to the modeling. What about a professional learning schedule that has PLC times built in? Is that evidence that you have a structural model in place for professional learning communities? What about evaluating, like I do an online evaluation in Google Form after every PD day? Right there it says, conduct surveys and evaluates results of PLC work. There's another piece of evidence. So when you're looking for the evidence in this case under staff or relationships, go to the modeling box, read it, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, these are some things, not that we're probably doing them all, and that's okay, but that's where you want to get to. So think about what evidence are we collecting in this area, and then what are we not? Because the not will help you with your growth and where you want to be. And always remember, it's okay if you're not at modeling. You're hardly ever going to be at modeling. If you are, whoo, that's great. But it just allows you to figure out what work do we need to do, or what are some things that we need to improve upon. Does that make sense? Okay, so I have a webinar or a Zoom meeting in 2 minutes. So you can sit here and maybe read through that rubric and start to jot some things down about evidence that you are collecting or that you have. More importantly, maybe what are some things that you need to be thinking about. And then this is just kind of a table for us to start entering some of those things so we have some examples to share with each other. And then once we're done with relationships, we'll move into rigor and we'll do the same thing. So I think getting some of that information in there now, and then when we meet next time, we can talk more about it, go back into the rubrics and really have some great discussion about it, and then we'll move on to the next one.